still wasn't where she wanted to be in her career. And I think for that, what that showed me is that you can work forever and ever and ever, but when is it enough? And when is it going to kind of finally get you where you want to go? And I don't know, for me, it just put a bad taste in my mouth that that grind wasn't for me. Yes, I'm all about working hard. I grew up, in a steel family, steel mill industry. So we're taught to work really hard, but I want to work really hard for me, not for somebody else. And so at that point, I moved from LA to Florida, which is where I'm logging in from now. And that's the funny thing about Jacob and I, is that we actually live not even like a couple miles from each other. And so when we met, I truly believe it was like fate and it was supposed to happen because we both kind of need each other at that point in our lives. So for me, why I chose Florida is I came here because it was a lot happier here in Florida than it was back in Ohio. And when I say that, what I mean is it's gray probably 300 days out of the year in Ohio. And so I suffered from depression at age 21. And that was after a battle of just like a bunch of stuff that I went through. But one thing in particularly is I lost a friend to an accidental drug overdose. And that kind of put things into perspective to me that life is very short and that there's people out there who are unhappy in their own lives and they feel like drugs and alcohol are the only escape to get out of that. And not to say that that's his issue or anything like that, but that just prompted me and inspired me to help people in recovery. So I moved here to Florida. I started working at a car dealership at that time because I took any job I could to get me out of LA just to be able to kind of get back on my feet. And then long story short, in February of 2016, I made a commitment to myself to get a financial education. And I'm assuming everybody on here is in tune with that. Jacob, I don't know where you went because I'm a little tech challenged. I don't know how to find your face again. Are you on here still? Where's he at? Where's Jacob's face?
Jacob, you're muted.
Where's he at?
How did I get muted? That's
Where'd you
weird.
go?
I'm right here.
I can't. There you are. I don't know how to work this.
I don't know how I got muted. That was odd. So anyway.
But, is everybody on here like from Legacy or is it just random people?
No. So there are some people from Legacy, some people who are not, because now we're starting to grow.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay.
So with that, I made the commitment to get a financial education. And so for those of you who aren't familiar, Elite Legacy Education is where I went, where Jacob went, where Anita went, and I know some of you familiar faces probably went as well, to learn about money and learn about leveraging and assets and liabilities and financial education and real estate and in the stock market and entrepreneurship and all these different things. So February of 2016, I did that. And some of you may have met Nicole DeBraccio, which was another, I think, live thing that you had done.
Yep,
and she was actually my trainer.
Wednesday last week before.
Yeah, I remember seeing it when I was moving actually, but she was my trainer and she is someone that I admire because she herself is a stay-at-home mom with money coming in and she does not have to depend on anybody else to do that. She's got commercial properties, wineries, things all over the world that inspired me. So a week after that, I went to a 3-day basic training where I basically learned the ins and outs of investing. And then from there went on to take advanced classes specific to subjects. Now, the cool thing about all of that is my parents were actually products of the company that I became a student of and that Jacob became a student of. So I had a financial education growing up, but I just never really put it into practice because I think until you have enough pain in your own life, sometimes you don't make the changes necessary. And that was me. I didn't have enough pain in my life until I was about 25 years old. And so I got this education, started learning about real estate, but where the social aspect comes in and kind of the empowerment side of it is when I was going through a depression, one way I got out of that depression was by volunteering. And I know I speak to Jacob when I talk about that, there's a lot of people who need our help, especially right now with everything that's going on in the world. I think there's a lot of organizations that really need assistance, not even just financially, but with raising awareness and everything else. So I've worked with about 67 nonprofit organizations in South Florida. 55 of them have been pretty core that I was involved with, but one in particularly that I am involved with, their name is Place of Hope. And that's kind of where Jacob and I connected because Place of Hope helps children who are aging out of foster care. And so one of the biggest populations, especially in Florida, of homelessness is children, because if you age out of the system at 18 and you have nowhere to go, you either live on the street or, otherwise you're becoming incarcerated or doing other things. So everything we're doing kind of ties into one another. Social housing for me, which I know we'll kind of talk about a little bit more, my focus with that is the formerly incarcerated and people with a drug addiction or alcohol addiction of any sort. That's my particular group of people that I want to help, because I have a lot of people in my circle and in my family who've been affected by that. So that for me was the biggest thing. And then the place of hope side of things with helping children in foster care, I just love kids. And that's just always been a mission for me, is to help the youth. So those aspects, and then tied in with what Jacob does, is kind of how we've all connected. I think that's a long story short.
It's funny because when I pivoted, and everybody, most of you guys who are in the room, but not everyone, who's seen me transition from being a dancer to being a real estate agent to a broker to what I'm doing now with the youth, it's never a straight path.
Never.
Especially in my case, it takes all sorts of curves. But as you're going through it, what made the biggest difference for me, and this is what I wanted to talk about today with Whitney, is when you acknowledge the vulnerability,
Mm-hmm.
you get a lot of power. Whitney talked about depression, and it's funny because the people who are most optimistic are the ones who usually struggle the most with depression. You take things personally, and I know we're not the only two in the room that have that. And first of all, when you acknowledge that, there's strength in just owning that.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing is, it's so easy to get depressed or to lose your way when you focus on the difference between what I call weather and climate. So right now, our current weather is keeping us at home. It's this pandemic that we can't breathe, we can't leave our house, this feels oppressive, we can't go anywhere. But the climate that we're in is actually full of opportunity. And it's the way that we're able to reconnect with each other. It's the way that we're actually able to go and reach out to friends who have their birthdays and actually call them, not just send them a like on Facebook.
Yeah.
You know, it's the fact that we see that there's a lot of need out there right now, and it needs what we have. The need out there is bigger than us, and we have to get out of our way. So when I stated my purpose, which I used to be embarrassed about, which is to help LGBTQ kids find housing, suddenly everything's starting to open up for me. Mm-hmm. And it's so much more fulfilling. It is not easy. It's the hardest thing I've ever done, and it's not going to get any easier, but I'm finding more support. And I think that's where a lot of newer investors and entrepreneurs go. They don't want to tell people and share the struggle that they go through trying to build their business, trying to grow. They want to keep it very private, and then reveal themselves when they're successful, where no one can see their embarrassments. Yeah. Does that sound like, can anybody else relate to that?
I believe that. We're an ego-driven society, and it's like the minute that something that might discredit your feelings or whatever, for sure, 100%. I'm in the same boat. But I think like right now, just like you're saying, it's the time that everybody is becoming more vulnerable. And if you're going to express it or feel some certain way, I feel like now's the time to do it. I just got out of my lease at my apartment because I was paying $2,500 a month for a property I didn't even own. I moved back in with my parents, and I'm not too proud to say it. It's smart. Think about that for a moment. Why would anybody do that when we're sitting in a time right now where nobody's making any money? Whether you're an investor, whether you have a job, unless you're working in the food industry, what kind of, real solid job do you have if you're depending on somebody else? So I don't know. I agree with that 100%. I think we're all in a position where it's time to be vulnerable, because you're going to have more people that are going to buy into that now versus, any other time.
And if you're not going to build your dreams now while you're stuck at home, when the hell are you going to do it? Yeah. You're not going to take a risk now. You're never going to. Yeah. So you might as well do it. And there's something that I also really loved that Whitney talks about. When I first met her, she talked about the fact that she wanted to do more in real estate than just own houses, because she lost a very close friend of hers, her best friend, when she was 18?
21.
You were 21.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that? Do you mind talking about
a little bit? I don't know who's logging in, so it could be people related. I'm not sure. But he was a very good friend of mine. We went to prom together. It was like a guy best friend for me. I was always kind of a guy's girl, and always just like had relationships with guys more than females. I had some female friends, but was always kind of the guy's girl. And I got a phone call when I was living in LA about his passing, and it killed me. And I think what killed me most is like, I almost like had an intuition of something bad was going to happen. I never knew what it was or who, but I just kind of had that feeling, because I feel like, and this is just me, I'm one of those, laws of the universe kind of person, but I feel like our inner being's always telling us what's right and what's wrong. It's just you have to listen to it. And so right now with this whole quarantine stuff, I'm really doing a lot of like self-reflecting stuff and saying, what do I want to do? And I'm thinking about how that thing is making me feel. And if it makes me feel negative, I don't want anything to do with it. And so with that whole situation, I think that's where I kind of learned that your gut is actually a resource for you. It actually tells you how you're feeling. And so when I was living there, that's kind of that feeling I had, is like, this is not for me. I need to get out of LA. And so his passing was one of the most emotional things I had ever been through. I think mostly because I wasn't there, and I wanted to be a part of his life just as adults. And you think about the dreams and like the hopes that all these people have. And he's just one person of many who struggle with addiction. You know, there's people everywhere who have that problem, who think that their problems are the biggest in the world. And it's true to you, and you're not, you know, who are you to discredit that? But there's different outlets than using drugs or drinking to help that. And I think that that's where that purpose comes in, is I want to leave people in better condition than I found them in. And sometimes that means pushing your ego to the side and being humble and just doing what you have to do.
And it's so crazy. So Whitney went from that to actually helping run rehab centers. And at first I thought that was so like, this is the interesting thing about what we do now. I'm guilty of this. I actually thought when you first shared that, there was a stigma, because we live in Delray Beach in Boca Raton, Florida, where we are like the world capital for rehab centers. Yeah. And it was like this dirty thing in my perception, because there at that point in time, there's a lot of underhanded things going on in the industry. For those of you who don't know what a lot of recovery houses were doing, when you can totally jump in here, they were taking people in, getting them sober, and getting paid from the insurance companies. And then when the insurance was about to stop paying, they would stage a relapse and get the individuals hooked again, then kick them out of that house that they owned and put them into another home and collect the insurance money all over again. People started dying from this.
That was one aspect of it, for sure.
Yeah, it was horrible. So there was a stigma that was attached to it. And since then, they had to change a lot of laws in our area to make these homes, which are essential to giving people purpose in life, but they had to make them a lot tougher so that people weren't dying. So I've watched Whitney pivot her model from what she was doing 4 years ago when I met her to what she's doing now, which is helping these women and men coming out of incarceration. Yeah. Whitney, what's that like? So why did you choose that demographic?
Yeah, formerly incarcerated, for me, again, it ties to my family. I have cousins who've been in and out of prison, and it's always been something for me that I don't know. I feel very inclined to help that community. But one big thing about it from an investment standpoint is the Department of Corrections will pay a fee per person per bed to rent to people coming out of prison. And so again, if somebody has a stigma, they might think like, I don't want to rent to people coming out of prison. And another side, you might get, well, that's not even really helping people because you're still getting paid for it. Yeah, but you got to leave the lights on. You know what I mean? You're helping people, but you also have to do this from a perspective of making it work. And if you don't have the money to do that, it's impossible to do. So the formerly incarcerated for me is because I have close people around me who have been and still are incarcerated. And I know that system very well in and out of prison. So that for me was a no-brainer. But on the business side of it, with the Department of Corrections, there's many levels to it. But ultimately what happens is, depending on your city, your county, your state, depending on the individual, there's funding available to those who would be at most risk to be homeless. We're typically dealing with nonviolent criminals. So obviously if somebody's, being charged with murder, they're going to be in prison for a long time. They're not someone that I'm probably going to house, because I'm dealing with people who are nonviolent. So maybe they were, in the passenger seat of a drug deal at one point, or maybe they were an accomplice in something, or it could be drug related where they have an addiction problem. And so they are dealing drugs because they're addicted. And so they're incarcerated for that. So there's a lot of different avenues, without getting too specific and nobody knowing what I'm exactly talking about. There's a lot of different ways that you can help people. But once you have the real estate side of it, that's where the funding kind of comes in. I don't know if I answered your question, Jacob.
You absolutely did. And it's something about giving someone a second chance. They're more appreciative.
For sure. I mean, those are the best types of people. You're getting people who are conditioned to a system where they have to do bed checks at 4 a.m. and they have to make their bed every day. And you're putting them in a place where you're giving them a second chance and you're giving them a little independence. And it's a beautiful thing when you see it happen and you see people get their life back. A lot of my stuff's been put on hold because of this whole Corona stuff. But I anticipate after July, things will probably pick back up.
But the thing, and on that note, this is the interesting thing. Even though you've been pivoting, like I just picked some stuff up. Thank you for the donations, by the way.
Right.
So you didn't just stop because of COVID. You are taking actions to do other things. What are you currently doing right now to build your business, even though you can't go out there and house people the way you were thinking?
Right. So right now, it's been funny because I'm doing a lot of internal reflections as well. But one big thing is I'm getting my real estate license, and I was kind of against it for a long time, and not because I don't believe in it, but just because you don't need a real estate license to be a real estate investor. You don't need it. But if you have a real estate license, it can be a bonus if you are doing what we're trying to do, which is help a specific group of people, which in my case would be the social aspect of it. Not only that, but my boyfriend is a general contractor and we want to start doing some deals together. And if I have my license, then that just eliminates another person that we're going to have where I could get the commission of listing the property. He does a lot of custom builds and spec homes. And so he can do that. And then I can list the property and get the commission. It's a no-brainer. I also want to be able to make offers on my own properties and not have to deal with somebody else. I think that's kind of that do-it-yourself mentality that I revert back to sometimes, is being in control. And I've dealt with a lot of real estate agents, unfortunately, that don't get where I need them to go. You know, I'm like, can you make 30 offers in the next 24 hours? And the question is, you know, are they understanding how we do it? Because we do it a little bit different than that traditional make an offer. We do letter of intent a lot of times. And if they're not willing to do that from that first day, I know that's not the agent for me. But finding that is difficult, especially when you're in South Florida and you've got thousands of real estate agents. It's very difficult to find the right one when there's so many.
It's so true. And it's in the how real estate is evolving right now is so different, but it's also for every model. Like Ben, so he had a webinar earlier today. Like every model is changing. Ben, you were saying that we want a webinar with you and your company. Florida is letting people get their health insurance license and sell health insurance without having a license for 6 months. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Just, you know, giving people a benefit of where people can't make money. So how to help people, how to, you know, give people opportunities to try something new, to learn a new industry on the health insurance side. So so Florida is opening its doors for anybody you do the 62-hour course like you would with real estate, and then they'll give you a temporary license for 6 months, and then they'll require you to take that. But that's almost like an internship with the different industries. So it's pretty cool to get people back into work.
Are they doing that with any other form of insurance as well?
That is not as of right now, no.
That's the crazy part, because Pearson View, where we typically get our testing, they're all closed right now for COVID. So there are other places that you can do and you can pivot. So I thought that was really interesting when Ben sent me that webinar. So that was very interesting too. So I'm going to take it back to Whitney before I lose this train of thought. Whitney, when you decided to get a real estate license, you called me and we were talking about what all we can do. And it's funny because what I'm seeing is people are starting to think about their previous stigmas, their previous belief systems, and they're really starting to question why they always thought this stuff.
Yeah.
Because now, I mean, let's be honest, America was very quick to give up our rights. The entire world was. It's for a reason. We all have to stay home. But when we hold something so true, it's like, well, why are we doing that? And you reflect everything about what you know to be a foundational truth for yourself.
Yes.
So, what other things were you questioning that you started to address through this pandemic?
I think so. For those who do know, I'm a professional speaker, so I would speak weekly with Elite Legacy Education, just traveling the country and doing seminars. And I'm even questioning that aspect of things right now, just because I love what I do in that realm, but I love being home right now. Like I'm enjoying it so much. And I think a piece of my life that's been missing is that volunteering side of it. Because when you're working every single week in a different state and you're on a plane more than you are a car and you're living out of a suitcase, it's very challenging to do things that fulfill you. And I think I found myself almost like falling back into that depression in the last 4 months because I haven't been able to do the things that have corrected it. And so I'm actually really grateful for being home right now. And I can't wait to get back to doing things because I'm kind of going crazy, but I am enjoying it because that self-reflection I'm discovering about myself is that I need to be giving constantly to be able to feel fulfilled. And I think that now with all the transitions and being able to get my real estate license, one thing I'll be able to do is help people who can't qualify for a mortgage because of all the education we have and all the knowledge we know about creative financing and getting into deals with no money, no credit. Even if you are just a homeowner, that's one aspect to the game that we'll be able to bring. And I say we because I'm speaking as Jacob because he's kind of a leader for me in this space.
Oh, wow, that's very sweet. And you're right. And actually, on that note, before he goes, speaking of, Alex Arriaga, unmute yourself. So speaking of things that we can do, so this is something part of the idea we want to do to help things grow. So what does Whitney need? She needs her license, she needs guidance. She's doing amazing. She's changed so many lives, right? Her business needs to pivot. She's got to find properties. If we find properties and traditional lenders aren't lending, well, what do? Alex Arriaga, unmute. I'm going to unmute you now, my darling. Speak, you sexy beast. Say hello.
Hey, Jacob and everyone, and Whitney, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Oh, you look so cute in that picture, honey. I almost want to put you over
I'll go ahead and reveal here. I'm happy to be here. And Jacob, thanks for inviting me. I love this conversation. When I heard that it was a Whitney and women talking, I was happy to be here. Reason why I think this real estate world has a lot of different aspects to it. But one of the things that, and this is something I'll tell you guys that I think all of you should really pay close attention is, one of the things that I've learned and I've experienced for the last 21 years is like women have this instinct to people, which is totally necessary for this business, which is now being tested. And knowing that Whitney was going to share her story, her line, to me, that was fascinating. I love to always be a participant in seeing that because there's a lot of things that we can learn from it. So the best thing that I believe that, in my opinion and my view that Whitney, you have to share, and thank you for that, it's that element of vulnerability, which really makes the trust level between sellers and buyers and investors and lenders create relationships with you where you think right now you may not be able to do based on where you are in this real estate journey, but it's actually detrimental to not go to that place. So Whitney, thank you so much for sharing that. And Jacob, thank you for bringing this call together.
Well, I'm so glad. I do it Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So, but Alex also he teaches people how to partner with lenders and how to actually acquire money when it's tight. So Alex, what are you seeing that are similar from now and today with the pandemic versus what was happening earlier? Because you've been doing this since you were a baby. So what are you noticing that's similar, and how can people talk to money partners? How can they help line that up so they can start getting their business moving and not totally lose the momentum?
That is a huge question.
I know, you can hate it.
But I'll give you something to work from a perspective that you guys can work in. I don't mean to interrupt, Whitney. This is your presentation. But I'll say this: it is inevitable, the shift that is happening in the real estate market, which is what we call in our office. We're pivoting to what's happening to the real estate market. Real estate is still something that is a bare necessity of life. Every time I say that, I think about like Jungle Book and a bear talking about bare necessities of life. And shelter will continue to be a bare necessity of life. And some of the things that lenders we're looking at right now, as we invest in money against real estate assets, we're looking at, what is the usability of it? What is the world needing from it? One of the things that I actually spoke in a little bit larger Zoom call, they were asking me a question, and what do I see about the shiftings in this market? And one of the things I said was like, we're having like the biggest experiment of working from home right now, which I think is kind of awesome when we look at the positive aspects of, what's happening in this pandemic. One of the things we're going to be seeing is how are people reacting to the ways that we're living right now, and will that continue to go? So I'll invite you to look at the same behaviors of what people are going to be doing in the near future when it comes to real estate. But as lenders or people that are investing still till this day, I mean, we have closings in the pipeline. What's happening is like we have like courthouses closed. Sometimes notary can't just be available. But what we have been adjusting for some of you that are currently looking for money to buy real estate, We have looked at the loan to values based on the asset class, which is basically if it's commercial, residential, or what type of businesses within real estate that you're running. But the necessity of it, it's still going to be there. There's still people that are going to be in the need of rentals, or going to be in need of a home. So the number one thing that I would want you to work on is in your market right now, just look at the diversity of the incomes in your market. And second of all, what I would look is, what is the highest necessity in a market that totally is having a paradigm shift? You know, some of you may live in a market right now that essential businesses are basically what is driving your market. Some of you, like, for example, if you are in the Silicon Valley area, or you're in places that biotech is really high, you understand that, or medical is really high, you understand those businesses are in high need. What was not looked at was needed before, it seems to be extremely needed right now. So look at how those markets are shifting for you, and just look at what is the highest necessity. I think I would add that to if I was you, I would add that to the portfolio. We're actually doing that in our lending portfolio right now. We're basically identifying what are the needs as we come out, or we're in it, or however long it extends, but having in mind what's the necessity of the people out there, and that it matches what, you know, the laws and regulations that are coming out of, you know, the government are happening right now. Does that make any sense?
It does. Part of the thing I'm noticing, like you're saying, notice where your money's coming from in your portfolio, is now that we're really an entire world right now that's being subsidized. The entire country right now is having money printed from air, and the government is trying to help inject your bank accounts with some stimulus money. Now, this is the thing that's interesting. There were, some of you guys know who Travis Howard is, but there's, who else? I know that Anita's on here. Yes, she and I had this call. People who had subsidized housing, like Section 8, or like the shared housing model that Whitney and I are trying to create, they get paid money like that every month, where it just shows up in their account. So even though there were a lot of landlords that were not making any money, and they were scrambling because their tenants couldn't pay last month, understandably, may not pay this coming month too, the people who have subsidized income, guess what? They're the ones that are still out there buying houses and keeping businesses flowing. So those stigmas that we have really hold us back from achieving our true potential and making our country better. There is nothing wrong. Whitney, I love you for everything you stand for, because you are gorgeous. You have the biggest heart. So do you, Alex, but you know I have a crush on you. Whitney, you know I don't, but I love your husband, boyfriend, whatever. And, but my point is he there? Is he listening? Hi.
In his office doing
okay, cool. But the point is like, if you get off of your stigma and you realize that these are people who really could just use some love, that could just use someone to believe in them, that could actually, they want a hand up, not a hand out. Those are the people that I will house all day long, because they will be the ones that pass it on to other people and make our country better. I really, truly believe that. And that is one of the best things about living where we live, because we are able to do that. So, so Whitney, so tell us a little bit more about housing people who are formerly incarcerated. What are some of the, I know this is like a new, because you just started staying home and putting this all to play. You've had this dream forever. What are the similarities between what you were doing with recovery and what you're wanting to do with housing the formerly incarcerated?
Well, you'll find that with, I think, people coming out of prison, a lot of times they have a drug problem. It's just common, not always, but in some scenarios. So you're kind of dealing with a similar model. So, for example, if someone is coming out of prison and they have an addiction, because believe it or not, drugs are actually worse in prison in some areas than they are outside of prison. So if someone is in prison, they do have a drug problem, when they get out, they might still need medically assisted treatment. And we call that MAT. And that means they would be using like methadone or Suboxone to wean off of whatever drug they're addicted to. There's funding for that. So if you're just housing somebody who gets out who's otherwise going to be homeless, there may not be enough resources to do that. If your house is certified and you've got that medically assisted ability to provide that as a resource, that just means you can help more people, but it means you can get more money too, more funding for the organization that you're helping, because there's funding for that specifically. You can't legally discriminate against somebody because they have an addiction problem. So you can't say, I don't want so-and-so living here because they're a drug addict. You can't do that. And I know that even that term is sour in some areas and to some people, but that's just the reality of it. Some people act that way, that they don't want a house full of those kind of people. And I'll be the first to tell you that those kind of people can live next to me all day long and twice on Sunday. I love those groups of people because they're the ones, like you had mentioned, who really want a second chance. And yes, you're going to have people who come out who don't, but they're going to know within the first 24 hours if our house, Whitney's place, is a place for them. Because when you walk into the home, you're going to see, everything that we stand for. And we are faith-based, and we are all about the laws of the universe, and we're all about feeling good and meditation and praying and doing things that feel good. And if they're not for that, then sorry, we're not the house for you. No harm, no foul. You just refer them to somebody else. I think the biggest similarity, though, is that they're two vulnerable people who need to find a way to kind of get to the next phase. If someone's getting out of prison and they have a criminal record, it's very challenging to get a job. It's very challenging to find housing. And so we're able to kind of help that stigma, I suppose, and get them back on their feet, because I will hire those types of people. And I know groups of people around me who will as well. When it's addiction, it's a little bit different, because now you're dealing with health, you're dealing with medical, and now there's a level of treatment that's going to have to happen before they can start getting their life back. Because now that you're not only treating, the realities of re-entering society, you're also trying to love yourself, which can be challenging too.
I love everything you just said, and I agree. What I want to do based on what you just said, and Alex has talked about this briefly before. I know Anita touches on this a lot. Oh, and we got Kim here. Wonderful. So for those who I just mentioned, I'm about to call on you. I hated this so much for so long. Finding your why sounds like a bunch of hippy-dippy, touchy-feely, like hippies that I love in. It bothered the hell out of me. So let me rephrase this for you. For those of you who are trying to figure out how to see the climate, not focus on the weather, you got to figure out what's your reason of getting out of bed. Now, parents understand that because they've got kids that they got to get out of bed for. Even if they don't like them that day, they still love them. And sometimes, even if they don't love them, they still, hopefully, if they're good parents, they'll at least get the kids clothed, fed, give them a hug, and send them off to school. Or nowadays, to the tablet at the kitchen table. So what I want to rephrase this for everybody is finding out what is going to motivate you to pivot your business and enjoy it during this time. For me, it was because I was kicked out for coming out at a young age. Whitney, it was because she lost someone close to her that opened her eyes. Frank and Sherry were exposed to a different segment of our society when their daughter was going through rehab. So what are some of yours? Like, why do you guys, say you had all the money in the world, you're already investing in real estate and you're successful, who is it then that you want to help? I'm going to unmute everyone. It's going to get noisy. Unmute all. Here we go. Put your Doritos bags away, Mike. And what is it that you are trying to achieve? Who do you want to help? Anyone and everyone.
I mean, I've worked with students for the past 8 and 9 years. I coach parkour, and my kids, I've watched them become like carbon copies of me throughout the years. Some of them are like 16, 17 years old now. And I'm just like, wow, you guys are turning into little versions of me. If you keep following my trajectory, where are you going to end up? I need to become better to show them where they can go in the future. So I want to do this for my students in my community.
And you've been stepping up lately, mister. I saw your little podcast that you shared on Real Talk. Very well done.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Who else? Who else would want help? Like, I know there's people who want to help. Oh, you guys are not getting off the hook that easily. I will call on you one by one if I have to.
All right, Jacob. All right. I'll step up. You know me.
Uh-huh.
Hi. I miss you guys so much. You have no idea.
We miss you too, baby. The money back.
One of these days I'll get bold and show the video of me while I'm actually talking to you guys.
Girl, you got bigger balls than the rest of us. They're just having to be on your chest. So.
Not anymore, dude. Surgery fixed that.
When I see pictures of you before your surgery, I still can't believe it. I'm like, oh my God. So, Anita, sorry, Kimmy, who is it that you want to help? Because you have a lot of Section 8 housing. In fact, you're one of the 3 landlords is it the state of Georgia that represents Section 8 landlords, or is it the city?
No, just our district. Just our Section 8 district. And we actually, yes, I was one of 3 landlords serving on an advisory board for over 750 landlords in our area. But Section 8 comes with its pains. But it seems to me like since I've not been traveling, I'm like Whitney, and I loved what she said about how going back on the road may or may not be what I want to do. I don't know. I'm finding a whole lot more fulfillment being back in my real role as an investor full time. And the things now I've got going on and the projects I'm working on, I'm working with some guys. We're finishing out the development on a 55 and older mobile home park. So seniors seem to be a direction I'm moving.
Awesome.
Also, I have a house going empty on May 1st that is going to be a perfect social housing home. And what we're going to focus on in our social housing project first, I think, is this fostering youth to independence and working on that constituency that is homeless after foster care.
So I love that you said that, and I'm sure you probably talked to Elise already because she and I spoke to like 2 a.m. last night. I'm so excited to work with you guys on that. Super excited. In fact, I've actually, the Attorney General for the state of Florida that's rewriting all the laws for kids aging out of the foster system is my chiropractor's daughter.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's been awesome. So I'm helping, like, I'm learning what she's doing so we can apply what they're trying to do to make this a national movement. So again, when
totally cool.
That is so much bigger. And you guys have always said it. If your vision is bigger than you, then you can't just do it your own way. And you can't afford to slow the hell down. You got to keep working on it because that is what your calling is. So, amen. Now, thank you, Kimmy. Oh, I miss you so much.
You're welcome. I miss you too, baby.
Mwah. So, Elise, are you there? Oh, there's Anita.
Anita! I miss you, girl.
Hey,
Miss you,
too.
So, Anita, what is your why, and how did you discover it?
Well, whenever we first got started in real estate investing back in 2011, our reasons why we got started in real estate investing then it's evolved into something totally different. So when we first got started, we got started because we wanted to be able to get our corporate management jobs. We wanted to be able to get out of debt. We wanted to be able to, Sam and I wanted to be able to spend more time together as husband and wife and travel. So a lot of those things were, economic and superficial, but as things kind of advanced, we realized that the reason why was much, much deeper reason than that. Because I think, as a society, we're kind of groomed to think about, well, what can money buy you, right? But whenever you start getting that flow of money coming in, you start realizing, what is it you can do with that money to actually help other people? And so we're into the building of a legacy, meaning that we don't want our kids to have to suffer through some of the pitfalls that was taught to us just by default in our society, and how to treat money and work for a living. We want to be able to create a level of freedom and lead by example. So hopefully, they would pick up the breadcrumbs and start following along behind us. And we have a couple of 2 out of the 4 of kids that we have has actually started doing that. But, as far as the scope of our business and the things that we're really focusing on, things we focused on all along, things that we're continuing to focus on and expand upon is things, for instance, like being able to provide affordable housing. Even when the economy is just absolutely booming, I've said in the past that, be careful of investing in what we call Class A properties and Class A neighborhoods, right? Because they work really well. They make cash flow well in an upbeat society. But whenever things start to go down, people still need a place to live, and those more expensive properties may not be the place they can afford. So we're expanding upon those affordable housing. We do some Section 8. We also, basically we're serving that sector that basically all these essential employees, your grocery store cashier, your delivery driver. Those type of people can afford these type of houses, and they're not in ghetto neighborhoods. They're actually in decent blue collar neighborhoods. We're closing on a mobile home park here in a few days. It's a small mobile home park that we're going to be expanding. And so that right there is an avenue to create more income for our family in a legacy type property that we can carry on for many generations and provide housing to people in need. Actually, we were involved in, seeing as we're closing in a few days, we were involved in filling one of the vacancies in this mobile home park. So we had a couple of applicants. The applicant we went with was actually a sheriff's deputy there in that town. You know, had a bad divorce, had stinky credit, you know, was remarried, had a couple of kids, and just needed a decent place for him and his family to live that they could afford. So those are the type of people that we're focusing on servicing now. But, you know, I'm just in continuation as to the why. A lot of people get hung up on why they want something. And, you know, I've always encouraged, like Whitney and Kim and others on here, you know, I've gone out and I was a student of Elite Legacy, went out and helped train other people as well. And I often would tell folks when they're first getting started is, you know, you may not know what your why is right now, or your why is going to shift, but start with the end in mind. Start with the end in mind in the way that whenever money and time is no longer an issue, what type of life do you want to live? What do you want to create for you and your family? And then back into that, because every little step that you take today should contribute towards that end goal.
I have to say, for me, my purpose reemerged. So this is something that I was talking to, I think, Angie about earlier today, or my coach, Eva, because I have a coach I work with. And Eva, she's amazing. You guys met her last week. And I was saying,
is Angie on this call? I thought I saw her on this call.
She was here. Miss Setnick, I saw you there. She'll show back up. I told her she didn't show up, I was going to smack her. So
I'll smack her for you.
Yeah, so part of it was like, I was telling her, okay, like if you think about when you were 17, 18 years old and you were full of dreams and aspirations, those, like that, I knew at 17, I wanted to do something like I'm doing right now. I knew I wanted to house people and give hope to people who didn't have it, because I was living it. And I knew that if I was able to do this, if I could survive all this, I could teach it. I knew that. So if you are one of those people who are thinking, okay, what is it I'm trying to do? Why am I doing it? Go back to when you were young and impressionable, and before you started, you know, collecting all those notches on your bedpost of life experience, and go ahead and think, okay, this is what I wanted to do. Why am I not doing that? Does that still ring true? So if you wanted to be a firefighter, which a few of you guys are, then why do you want to do that? When do you want to get into real estate, and who do you want to help? Now, we keep talking a lot about helping the underserved, and a lot of it's something that can still have stigma, but this is something else you can do. And Elise, I know you're here somewhere. Why wouldn't some people would feel really accomplished providing housing for artists and doing like an artist co-op? You know what I mean? Or like a collaborative space for people who are like dancers or musicians. I mean, some people might find that beneficial, or veterans, or, you know what I'm saying? So who else, what other populations, maybe an animal shelter? What else do you guys think you might want to do to start giving yourself fulfillment in your business?
Hi.
Hi.
It's interesting that you said just now, Jacob, because I think I've mentioned it to you really, really lightly in passing, but it's also pretty scary for me because Joe Earls is on the call, and I actually told this to him first because he's the one that signed like my paperwork when I was first signing up for Elite Legacy for like my big package. And I mentioned that like I would love being an artist myself as an actor, and like big hopes and dreams on Broadway and things like that. I just know the struggle of living in New York and trying to afford living, and also try to do your dreams and goals and stuff like that. So I've actually always wanted to kind of provide a space, like a housing space where it would be available to like all sorts of like performers, to kind of at a low income, like a low like rent value, because even $800 a month sometimes for some people can be a lot in New York City, especially if you're still trying to juggle serving a restaurant job and trying to do your artistry. And also provide them a space to be able to kind of promote their work moving forward. And that's when I mentioned the other day that I have a friend who has her own nonprofit, and her nonprofit's also very big about not only do they have a lot of social justice like issues that they promote, like they had like they every year they do something for autism and all these things, and they use it, like a lot of times they have art, like a lot of their people that are involved in the nonprofit are all artists, and like we do different like art at like things to promote whatever we're feeling that we need to like discuss or kind of bring in information on, or raise funds if we need to. And it's also a great space because of this like nonprofit that people are able to have a chance to do their artistry in some way. And so me and her have been in communications to basically start this artist compound commute thing, like artist living facility, where we'd also be able to help promote them to work on their craft a little more leisurely, like a little more like as more full-time as possible, and then be able to help them push their artistry forward, whether it's visual artistry, whether they're in the design aspect of things, if they're performers, for the dancers, singers, actors, and stuff like that. And I, like I said, like it's shocking that you said that, and then I see Joe on the call, and it's like a little freaky for me, because we've talked about it, like my friend and I, and we have a goal that we want to at least be able to provide this for at least 10,000 artists in the next like 10 to 15 years. So
Why
like,
so long?
what?
Why so long?
Well, I mean, it's because
Yeah.
I know, and
Okay.
exactly why I need to get out of that mentality.
Mhm.
So maybe we need to reevaluate our timeline.
You know what? Sometimes you don't need to reevaluate. You just got to do it and let it happen. I don't know. Let me be very, and Whitney knows this. We had this talk the other night. I'm faking this. I am just trying to do my best. I am what Kim Christie calls an adult impersonator. I don't know what I'm doing, trying to help these individuals when I'm trying to figure out how to be an adult myself. But you know what? I know a lot more than they do. But along those lines of like, I'm helping these kids, like trying not only to get out of their situation, but give them the reasoning skills and the tools to get out of poverty. So if you added that model to what you're trying to do, helping these artists can change the world. Amen. I have three.
Sorry, not sorry. Right now, you're in quarantine.
Right here.
Like, people are in quarantine. Sorry, not sorry. And what are they turning to? They're turning to arts to keep them entertained and to keep them somewhat sane.
Exactly.
You know, so the arts are the least funded, yet the most utilized sometimes, and we just don't want to acknowledge it in its situation. I had a professor in high school that used to joke, just like theater has is an art form that has that is struggling to survive but can't seem to die. As in, like, it's been for hundreds of years, it's always been this low income form of performance. It doesn't always render a lot of profit, but yet it can't seem to ever really perish because people still turn back to it for fulfillment, for entertainment, for just moving them forward.
Yeah. So what I want to tell you, this is, and Whitney and I'm going to bring Whitney in for this part too. When I've been working with a coach. So you guys met Eva. I've been working with her since I started this. I moved in January. And her line for me is, your vision is too big for us to let you get in the way. Which I find to be so apropos. But we were talking today about why we do what we do and the purpose behind what we're doing. And what I'm hoping to get across to everyone, and Whitney is so eloquent at doing it, is it's okay to want to help others. It's also required that you help yourself.
Yes.
Right? So,
yes.
So Whitney, you want to help all these people.
Yeah.
You are helping these people. You have all these stuff in place. You're actually a face. Whitney, by the way, is the youngest member on the board of Place of Hope, because they're trying to pass it down to the next generation. And she actually has a library donated, named after her on the campus so that she can help educate these people. And they're all stocked with Rich Dad Poor Dad books, which is wonderful. But Whitney, why is it important for you, and how are you taking care of yourself so you can take care of all these other people?
It's funny that you asked that. I was just having this conversation with my dad yesterday, because last year I made a lot of money and I have nothing to show for it because I pretty much gave all of it away. And I think that one of the big things you have to do, and I'm learning this now, is that you do have to take care of yourself in whatever aspect that is. And one thing that I've done, like I mentioned at the beginning, is I moved back in with my parents because that's helping me. If I was to just continue to pay my rent and give that money away basically every single month for no reason, because I have other people that I can like benefit from right now, that's one way I had to do that, because that's $2,500 a month I'm saving that can go towards my mission, and simultaneously I'm helping myself. I think one of the big things though is that everybody wants to give everything away, and yeah, you know, if you see somebody on the side of the road, you give them a couple bucks. I'm guilty of that. If I only have a $20 bill and somebody's asking me for money, I will give them $20. And I think that's just me and my faith that comes in, and just knowing that like you get what you give kind of mentality. But I think right now, the biggest thing is that nobody is making decisions because nobody knows what's going to happen. And I think if you're going to help yourself and you're going to kind of stay true to who you are right now, the biggest thing to do is to save every dollar that you can, but at the same time, do all the work on the inside that you need to do. Because like we were talking about, I think it was me and you, Jacob, or might have been Shannon. We said, if you come out of this quarantine not better at something, then shame on you, because there should be some sort of skill set that you're acquiring right now that could eventually help somebody. And so one example of that is years ago when I was working with all these nonprofits, I had no idea that full circle would come back around and I would be in this position where I would be having my own nonprofit and having a library named after me because of a donation that I gave. I had no idea that was going to happen, but all the little seeds I planted in that meantime of helping other people kind of brought that back to where we are now. So I think what everybody should be doing right now to help others is maybe more of a skill set side of things, not monetarily, because you can give and help people in other ways by not just giving money. I think if you're bettering yourself in a skill set, or if you're setting up a nonprofit, or you're getting specific with your why and figuring out your mission, I think that's how you can do that probably the cheapest way, where you're not, breaking yourself to be able to do it. Because I always thought for so long the only way to give is financially, and that's not true. There's so many other things you can do to give.
And then something else too is if you're giving to something bigger, people want to be a part of it. People want to help. Especially right now, they're wanting to connect. They're wanting to see each other. They're wanting to see how they can support. Last week, and I'm sharing this, I'm trying to inspire people because this was something I wasn't expecting. Last week, I had until last night, total 4 individuals offer to help out by either offering me buildings in other states, financing to take care of what I need to do during my monthly bills, which I need to cover to keep the foundation going, and helping with marketing to get myself out there and be visible to make the change we need to make. And I can't do all of it on my own. So if you find out what it is you want to do and you tell people about it and you stick with it and you do something consistent, it's going to catch up. It's going to make waves. It's going to be seen. That's why I'm doing these 3 times a week, to stay consistent with something so that people have something to reach out to and see it. You guys can try the same thing. Take care of you first, so that if you know what you want to do, and go for it. And then what I recommend, find out what you want. And then the second thing I recommend doing is make a personal sacrifice to show God, the universe, whoever you want to call it, make it to where they know you're serious.
Yeah.
And what I did, it's funny you're doing your juice cleanse now, was I went into quarantine. I did 2 weeks of just juicing during the day. I'd only have juice. I'd have meals for the kids at night if I ate. And that's what kept me going. So I was taking care of myself. I was showing that I really wanted this to work, and things are starting to happen. So what can you guys do collectively? What do you guys think you can do to up your own game within you? Not worrying about financials, nothing like that, but for you. What can you guys do to step up right now? What do you think?
I would say for me, just, be more organized, have a routine, be disciplined. Instead of taking that hour or 2 to watch TV, learn something. I think what you said, Whitney, was perfect. If you're coming out of this with not acquiring a new skill or learning something new, then what have you been doing for 5-6 weeks? There's going to be a lot of people who come out of this quarantine. There's going to be a lot of people that come out of this quarantine really, really strong and above everybody, or ahead of everybody. And there's going to be a lot of people who are going to come back and be really behind. It's going to take a long, long time to catch up. So I'm newly married and just working with her of how to be a team, how to push each other in a positive direction, how to be stuck together, but still make money and still try to work on new ideas and never settling. So that's what I'm working on.
That's fantastic.
Yeah,
For
thanks.
me, it was making sure I was giving myself enough vitamins. That was my big one. That's helped the time. What about anybody else? Anita, what are you doing?
Well, like you, Jacob, I have upped my vitamin game. um, so I am doing a little self-analysis study. So I've ventured into that, and I've got a coach that's actually located out in the Los Angeles area that's kind of evaluating me through that. So that's a really cool thing, because not only does it help from a personal perspective, but also from a business perspective as well, and helping basically target in. You know, one of the things that I was just studying through a lesson this morning, and it's funny that you asked this, because I thought that this was so appropriate for the time, and it was talking about confusion in my study. And confusion, you know, a lot of people, when they get into being an entrepreneur, you know, real estate investing, stock investor, what have you, there's a lot of confusion whenever you get a groove down and something like COVID-19 happens and the world goes on lockdown. That creates confusion, and it talks about confusion is nothing more than uncertainty, and confusion leads to what it very frankly says is stupidity. And I've got my book, happen to have it right here in front of me. It says and it says, when you think of uncertainty, stupidity, and insecurity, think of confusion and you'll have it down pat. So, and then it talks about, you know, how do you eliminate the confusion? And you eliminate the confusion by setting a stable datum. You got to do something, right? You might have a list of things to do. You might know you need to do some things. It might be eating better. It could be working on your marketing. There's all these different things that envelop, you know, our lives and what it is that you could be doing. But sometimes that list is so long, or what's going on in the exterior world, like with the lockdown, is so distracting that it creates confusion and you don't start. You know, you got to pick a point. You got to start. So you got to pick something that creates what is called a stable datum for you to be able to do. And once you get that first thing done, right, you get it under your belt, it elevates your confidence, it gets your momentum going, and that way you can attack the other things that you need to go forward and attack. Everything that's going on with this lockdown right now, guys, is noise. It's just noise. It's creating confusion. It's creating a distraction for those of us that know that, hey, we need to be doing something. Even those of us that has experienced a great deal of success over the last several years, all of a sudden people are panicking and they're just shutting down. They're not doing anything. So, you know, maybe it's just make a list of the things that you want to do to benefit yourself from a health perspective, a mental perspective, a business perspective, and just pick one thing. And it doesn't have to be the right thing that you need to start with. Just pick one thing and start with that one thing. Get it done, cross it off your list. That way you get that energy and that momentum going in the right direction to go on and tackle the next thing.
Agreed 100%. And it's funny, there's no perfect way to start. I think that's I love what you just said. There's no perfect way to start. Let me get my corporate structure set up. Who gives a damn? You don't have anything to protect. You don't have any assets. Why do that? Just start. Your marketing's going to suck at first anyway. So just start. You won't have any place to go until you start. So just start. And then once you get started, guess what? You got to keep going and you got to adapt everything. It's like juggling 1,000 plates. Who knows? But the thing that's really cool right now is if you start, everybody else is stalling. And now they're needing our help. I was listening to the news this morning, and there are so many millennials. And this is the thing. Oh, I'm talking to all my fellow millennials out there. You ready? I'm sorry. I'm going to go to church for a second.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I'm just holding it back. First and foremost, speaking as someone who is also a millennial, according to this newscast, we are not victims. We graduated college or high school into a recession where we couldn't get work. You had to either get a trade or learn how to hustle. And if you didn't learn to hustle when you were getting out of college, then now you're really struggling. Because now they have homes, they've got savings that are now being depleted, 401ks that are now gone, and they don't know what to do. Guess what? You are not a victim, you are a survivor. Change your mentality. It is time for you to hold yourself accountable and go out there and do something. You can sit there waiting for a government handout, and then you will always be waiting for a handout. If you look for a hand up and a community that's trying to raise above, then you will raise above. This is going to be bigger than us. Look for something bigger than you and attack it. Because you know what? We can do this. We do not have to wait and depend on other people. We can grow as a community. And I am so excited that you guys are part of my community. Thank you all. I love all of you.
Oh, we love you too.
Whitney, do you have anything you want to say to end on, like any parting?
Just the last thing that it kind of ties in with what Anita was saying and what you were saying is that if you are struggling, because I am struggling right now, I mean, in a positive way, as much as struggling can be positive. One thing to kind of figure out for yourself, if you are struggling with kind of where you want to go, is figure out what you don't want. And I know that sounds kind of weird, but if you make a list of all the things you don't want, like I don't want to do X, Y, Z, I don't want to depend on a job, I don't want whatever, then you'll figure out what you do want. Because what you do want, it tends to be the exact opposite. So that's just kind of my last words of advice is figure out what you don't want, then you'll know what you do want, then write down what you do want and meditate and focus on that. And then I think when you do that and when you every day do something that's going to get you one step closer to anything positive, it'll all kind of come together. I listen to money mantras, by the way. I know it's foo-foo, but you know, it's something that I do every morning. I play like a something that has to do with manifesting money or manifesting whatever it is you're looking for. And at minimum, it just gives you peace and you feel like good. So there's nothing wrong with feeling good. And then at best, you're going to manifest money. So,
I try to get up early before the kids are awake and just have quiet.
Yes, I'm big on meditating for sure.
Yeah, meditation. I would not have gone through 2019 without meditation. That has been the biggest difference.
Yep, agreed.
Either you've got to find your time with either the universe or God. It's the same thing.
Yep.
So you got to find it, and it's all within you. So make that time. That is huge. And everybody who, like Tony Robbins, Robert Kiyosaki, Dean Gratz, they all talk about this. So if you're not implementing in your life, which one of you is wrong? You know, it's like, okay.
Yeah.
I find that very valuable. So, well, Whitney, darling, thank you so much for being here.
No problem. I hope to have more to share in the future when this stuff is over. I know a lot of my meetings and things got delayed. April 9th, I was supposed to speak for the Department of Corrections to get Whitney's Place, which is my nonprofit that's still not technically established yet because of all this stuff. But I was supposed to go speak there because I'm actually on the Reentry Housing Committee for the city of Lake Worth. So I will be helping all the people coming out. It's just a matter of when that'll all take into effect, probably after July.
I'm actually going to have Frank and Sherry on here at some point talking about that model, how to actually create a shared housing model, and you need to have your power team for that. But I want to be able to talk about things to give people encouragement and mindset and things like that.
Yeah.
So guys, let me let you know what's coming down the pipeline for the rest of the week. Today I'm trying to do something like mindset and theory on Mondays. Wednesdays, I'm going to have women and LGBTQ entrepreneurs talking about how being a minority gives you an edge. And does not hold you back. It actually can give you a lot more tenacity. So we're going to be talking about that on Wednesday. I'm going to have a interview tomorrow, actually, which I'm going to send out and edit with my first transgendered CEO. So if you guys have any questions about that, please let me know, because email them to me or message me. I will filter them and make them not offensive. You can write them however you want to me, because I will not be offended. I will go ahead and make them appropriate to present as best I can, because I know we all have questions. And then on Friday or Wednesday, we're going to have Tim Tsai talking about how he built his business after having 4 heart attacks before his 30s. So, and how the value of time is there and what you can do to overcome that. And he's brilliant. He's offering his own education through real estate investing as well. And then on Friday, we're going to have our market recap. We're going to have Emily involved as well. Marie, you can certainly join in on for that. I love having you here. So we're going to have our stock market recap, as well as we're going to have an eco-friendly or sustainable business practice we can start talking about. Did you guys like Tim last week?
Yes.
I got so many messages from you guys. Most of you just wanted to say he was hot, which I know. If he were gay, I would have snapped it up a long time ago. But anyway, but he has been doing great things. We're talking more about him. I'm going to have a solar panel expert share with us on Friday, I'm hoping. Otherwise, I'm hoping to have Frank and Sherry on. So stay tuned, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And next week, I'm going to have more guests too. So guys, I love you so much. Thank you for being here. And go ahead, like Real Talk on Facebook, follow the Sherlock Holmes Foundation, and let me know how I can help you in your business, and we'll help each other. All right, guys, you're amazing.
Thanks again.
Bye, guys.
Take care.
Thank you. Thank you guys for coming. Bye.
Bye.